Hello and welcome to Being Boss,
a podcast for creative entrepreneurs. I'm Emily Thompson.
And I'm Kathleen Shannon.
I'm Jessie Pepper, and I'm Being Boss.
Today we're talking to Jessie Pepper about being a multi-passionate creative and what it takes to bring a passion project into fruition. As always, you can find all the tools, books, and links we reference on the show notes at www.beingboss.club.
All right, you guys, imagine this. You're racing against the clock to wrap up 3 projects. You're prepping for a meeting later in the afternoon, all while trying to tackle a mountain of paperwork. Welcome to life as a freelancer, small business owner, boss who's wearing all the hats. Challenging, yes, but our friends at FreshBooks believe the rewards are worth it. The working world has changed. With the growth of the internet, there's never been more opportunities for the self-employed. So to meet this need, FreshBooks is excited to announce the launch of an all-new version of their cloud accounting software. It's been redesigned from the ground up and custom built for exactly the way you work. Get ready for the simplest way to be more productive, organized, and most importantly, get paid quickly. The all-new FreshBooks is not only ridiculously easy to use, it's packed full of powerful features. You can create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds. You can set up online payments and with just a couple of clicks get paid up to 4 days faster. And you can see when your client has seen your invoice, putting an end to all the guessing games. FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to our listeners. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/beingboss and enter Being Boss in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Jessie is a lifestyle expert, on-air host, and the founder of a dress design called Season. She lives in Long Beach, California, where life currently revolves around her hilarious husband, their sidekick Sadie, and an ever-growing number of tabs on her internet browser.
All right, let's jump right in. Jessie, we're so excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, guys.
I am super excited about what you have up your sleeve right now, which we will share with our listeners. But first, I want to talk about how much shit you've got going on. So,
just to dive right in there.
You have a website, which I think everyone knows, which is Style and Pepper.
Style and Pepper.
That's like your home base.
That's my little internet home. That's a good way to say it. Home base.
So that's your home base. And then you have not one, but 2 podcasts.
True.
So you've got Marriage is Funny.
Yes. And then the second podcast, I don't even know if you could call it an official separate podcast. We call it a spin-off mini-series called The Perfect Wife.
I love that you gave yourself a spin-off.
Yeah, basically.
But
My dream come
awesome.
true.
So both of these podcasts are a little bit more personal, I would say, like where you're really exploring the topics of marriage and being a wife. And then you are coming out with a dress.
I am. How random is that? It feels like, oh my gosh, it's been quite the journey, but I honestly, as I've been working on it for the past year or so, it just feels like exactly what I meant to do. So we're launching a dress design, and the line's called Season, but it's really not a full line. So I don't even really call it that because it's just one design that I made myself basically about 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, I need to figure out the exact date because people always ask and I don't quite know, but I sort of Frankensteined a couple of my different dresses that I had bought together and made this prototype that I just wore for the last few years until last summer when I decided to start making a few more. I really just wanted one for myself in black because I had it in a pattern, and I was like, I wish I had this dress in black. And I tried to find something just like it. I mean, I tried everything. I exhausted all of my fashion connections to try to figure this out because I didn't really I knew that I could sew myself another one if I needed to, but I was like, I don't got time for that. So I was like, okay, I'll take it to a seamstress and get another one made in black. And then when I started pricing everything out and finding the fabric and everything, I was like, dang, this is a lot of work. And if I'm going to do one, maybe I'll do a few other colors. And then I had a few friends be like, well, make me one. And I thought, okay, so if I'm making 10, why don't I just make a few hundred?
I love it. So I want to, for everyone who isn't familiar with you, I'd love to hear like how you got to the dress, like all the things that you put together. Tell us like the timeline of your first website, like all the things. How'd you get here?
Yeah. So I've been blogging for about almost 9 years total. I guess in May it'll be, or May or June. And only as a full-time business has it been a part of my full-time business for about 5 years full-time. And so it's always been related to personal style and fashion. I would say over the last few years, I've then started to introduce more lifestyle stuff. So fitness, health, beauty, all of the things that I love to talk about. Designing a flavorful life is what we talk about. So that was kind of the foundation for setting up my business. When I started blogging, I was posting outfit photos, both of myself and of other people, and quickly started getting asked to do a lot of personal styling. So I was then doing that on the side in addition to my full-time job, and that was back when we lived in Kansas City. So since then, I launched a personal styling business, really built that from the ground up, and then we moved to New York City. A lot of my clients that I was starting to service were more brands, and then also ad agencies wanting wardrobe styling for commercials and print ads and all that. So my husband had a great job offer in New York. I was like, well, I'm already traveling there quite a bit for business, so let's do it. So we moved there, and we're there for about 4 years. And when we moved back to California about a year and a half ago, my business model, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's my business model, I think, had quite a few hiccups, and I can explain more about that if you're curious. But
yes, please
it
do.
Just okay.
I
well, I mean, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I think before my business model was I had my consulting clients who I was mentoring and helping them with their personal style and their fitness and their health journey, and kind of similar to life coaching, but I never call it that because I'm not a certified life coach. So these people would pay me to mentor them through their personal style journey. And then I would have brands that would hire me to do on-air hosting and to post about their products on my blog or social media channels. The on-air hosting stuff I still do, but the sponsored post stuff started to really taper off when we moved to California. And I think it was for a few reasons. One, the market just became so saturated. Two, I don't know if it's because I hit a certain age or if I'd been doing it long enough, but I just immediately felt like so jaded about it all. And Kathleen and I have talked about this in real life, I guess, a little bit, just because we've had a journey of both being in the blog industry for a long time. But then I also realized my life doesn't have the same need to put together these outfits and get dressed and take photos the same way that I did so easily before. And so I just was like, I need something new. And it's funny because that was actually a really, not to over dramatize it, which I have a tendency for, but that was a very dark time for me last summer because I was distraught. I felt like I had to let my original business die in a way, in order to make space for something new. And it's actually, believe it or not, a complete coincidence how closely that even ties into the word season, which is the name of our dress design. Because it was just really clear to me that I was trying to just keep adding new things maybe I can now do this and this and this, and just trying to pile it all on didn't work. And it wasn't until I really let go of everything I had been doing not only let go, but then sat in the emptiness and the sadness of that for a few months before I finally was like, this has been sort of almost sitting here in front of me all along, the dress design. And it's kind of funny to me that I never thought to pursue it before. Actually, people would ask me, what do you do for a living? And a lot of times, you have levels of what you respond to based on how long you want the conversation to go. So sometimes I would just say, I work in fashion. And then the very next question is usually, you're a designer. Everyone would always assume that. And I'd be like, no. And I have nothing against designers, but that was never, ever. I didn't go to fashion school. I don't sketch. It was never a part of my desire. But again, this whole dress thing kind of came about really organically. And when I thought I had nothing else to pursue at the moment, that was when I started writing a lot about just my career journey and the things that I want to pursue. And I'm lucky that I had some money saved up, and I'm lucky that I had a little bit more financial flexibility moving out here because, believe it or not, I mean, it's so funny. Like our life out here feels so much better than our life in New York, but it costs so much less.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we live less than 2 blocks from the beach, and our rent is, and our place is bigger, and our rent is less than what we paid in, it's ridiculous. But so I had a little bit more financial flexibility, and that allowed me to take a leap of faith, I guess.
Okay, so I think that's the thing that I was really curious about, is that you're doing all of these things, and I've known you long enough to know that, like, you cannot box baby in the corner. Like, you're not going to box Jessie in the corner. And that's one of the things that I've really admired about you for the past 5 years, because whenever I was all about expertise, niche down, what do you want to be known for? You were like, you cannot box me in. Like, it's a whole lifestyle. It's the whole shebang. And so then seeing the dress on top of it, I just couldn't help but wonder, how do you have the time for all of this? Mm-hmm. But in hearing your story now, it sounds like you did kind of have to let go, not necessarily of blogging, but the business model of blogging.
Yeah.
And I'm so impressed with what you're doing with the dress. So I'm super curious to hear about your journey of actually producing the dress, because I think that we all have these ideas of passion projects, from, oh, I'd love to write a book of personal essays, to design a dress, to, maybe like monetize a capsule wardrobe. Like, these are just a few ideas. So how do you actually start to bring, motivation or inspiration, and even just the logistics to making this a reality?
So the logistics are such a bitch. I definitely, I enjoy the how things work part of life. And so when I was starting off, after I decided, okay, I am going to pursue this, when I was starting off on the journey of how am I going to get this made, I had a lot of fear, just because I kept thinking the risk seems so much higher, because you're investing capital into the process of actually producing something. And we can talk more about that in a sec, but we're doing a Kickstarter. So I had a little bit of grace there in terms of not having to plunk down $20,000 or more. But still, the startup costs are for sure still there. And I wanted to bootstrap that. And so I was literally, and still am, taking on-air gigs and taking speaking gigs and putting, a couple $1,000s here, a couple $1,000s there, and just putting it straight back into season. So I'm using those other venues to pay the bills and then fund the startup costs of season. But yeah, I remember that when that all started, I was reading The War of Art for the first time. And a lot of times with business books, which I love a lot of them, but when they get really buzzy and when everyone's talking about them, that's when I'm meh. And so I read it, I felt after everyone else did, but I read it last summer, and I journaled my way through it.
And now 5 years later, you telling everyone you have to read this book.
Totally. And I'm this is why people were saying this before. Same thing happened to me last winter a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, was Essentialism. And that's one of the ones that you'll hear me say a lot of these things. I'm I was so resistant to reading Essentialism. And then when I read it, I was fuck, this is what I've been needing. This was me then deciding that this little garden of style and pepper that I'd been trying so hard to build and had been successful in building. I'm so proud of what I built with Style and Pepper and with that part of my business. And I will continue to operate under Style and Pepper as our parent company, as I say. Season is just a branch of that now. But I had to stop nurturing that, and let it die in a way, which is painful. When you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into it. But it's funny, back to the logistics. When I was reading The War of Art, I I remember so much, he really personifies, Stephen Pressfield personifies resistance and fear so much. And that actually helped me, because whenever I would come up against something in terms of production where I'm like, oh, I'm afraid to just like go cold call a bunch of US based cut and sew factories. Like, that's scary for someone who's never done that before, doesn't know what it's like doesn't know, I have no idea how this works. I would then, read a chapter of that book sort of accidentally and be like, oh, this is what he's talking about. That fear is what I need to push past. And it's almost like wrestling with this little imaginary person that it's just a part of the process, and it kind of adds depth to the story in a way. I don't know. I don't mean to like over, idealize it, but it was very, very much a part of my journey for sure.
I love that. I have this thought in my head that I'm going to get out and we can workshop together.
It's going to be good. I can tell.
Around how creatives, especially, we start businesses because we want to do this thing and we have this idea that we want to monetize. And I'm in the middle of this too, which is why I have to like process this out loud. And we do the good thing of creating this business model that works, and you do it really well. And then you change your mind. And not even so much that you change your mind, but you grow and you decide that, sure, you can do this thing, but you could also do something else. And so I feel like over the past couple of years, we've been at the forefront of creatives starting online businesses and what that looks like. But I feel this sort of shift in most of us who started around the same time, kind of being over that first thing that we did and ready to move on to the next thing, but having that weight of letting go of the thing we started in order to move on to the next thing. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on that sort of thought process.
It's even a little bit of guilt.
Yeah.
Like I have a little bit of guilt. I'm like, it's like, oh, dang, I don't know why I haven't really figured that out yet. Kath, I don't know.
So, it's funny for me because it does feel like it feels cyclical almost, which could probably come back to the idea of seasons, because as I revealed on our last episode, I'm actually wanting to get back into personal blogging.
Yeah.
I feel like personal blogging without monetizing is the thing that helped me really process and be present in actively capturing, shaping, and sharing my life. And at the same time, it feels cyclical. At the same time, I had to really put Braid Creative on the back burner to really bring Being Boss to the point where it is now. I mean, we've been able to monetize it. We've written a book. We are traveling all over the world all the time. And that's taken a lot of energy. But at the same time, whenever I think about Braid Creative and what I created with my sister, I'm so proud of that, and thinking about just letting it die, it was on the brink, and not that it is, because it's super healthy. We get a ton of clients, but there is this thing to putting your energy somewhere and what's going to happen with that. So now I'm even coming back around to Braid and thinking, okay, how can I help my sister and my team over at Braid Creative reinvent this into its next level and grow up? And I think the thing with evolving your business is that we're constantly thinking, I notice creative entrepreneurs do this a lot whenever it comes to like going back to a day job. And I put this in air quotes. And because the idea of going back, right?
Yeah.
So
it sounds like it sounds like you're reverting.
It sounds like you're reverting. So whenever I think about going back to Braid Creative, in my mind, I imagine, knocking on my sister's work shed door and saying like, hey, can I have my job back? But it's more, it's different. I'm coming back to it as a different person, and that's going to evolve the brand in a different way. So I just have to constantly keep in the forefront of my mind that we're always moving forward. Even if something feels like we're going back to an old experience, whether that's a day job or maybe you start consulting at Style and Pepper again in a few months or a few years, it's not going back. It's bringing who you've become to that original concept, I guess. And I even experienced this like in my personal relationships, in my marriage, in my relationship with my kiddo, because he's changing all the time. So I think it's just giving our businesses permission to evolve and change and breathe right side along with us.
So I agree with that. Then that really makes me think about, so, like whenever we were branding ourselves back in the day for our first business, it's like, all right, I'm going to spend the next 25 years doing this thing. So here's my brand. It'll stay here forever. I challenge people these days, especially if you're creatives, to build a brand that's a little more flexible. Like, definitely say what you mean and know what you're offering right now, but know that the decisions that you're making right now are not going to be the exact same decisions that you are going to hold true for yourself 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So I think that there almost needs to be this like flexibility in branding these days that needs to hold space for where you're going to be 3 to 5 years from now, which I think is really important. And it also makes me really interested to see where we will be in 5 to 10 years from now. Or will we find the thing that we want to do for 20 years and we're just on the path to get there? Or will we keep evolving to the point that we're all going to have like every piece of medium, like living in our, like under our umbrellas? We're going to make things and we're going to sell things and we're going to have TV shows and radio shows and all the things like, or
yeah, girl,
right?
I think in current company, all three of us are going to be doing all the things.
Or Jessie, will your dress and your line be it forever? Like this,
yeah,
I really look forward to seeing where we all are in a couple of years.
Yeah, and actually I love that you're kind of verbalizing taking that into account, because I hadn't thought of that ever, maybe. I'm very I loved dreaming about the future, but I don't think I'd ever thought about it much in terms of like how might my brand change based on what my actual output is, until fairly recently. So our branding is being done by a past Being Boss guest. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, she's been on the show. I'm like, I know her in real life.
Wait, who is it?
Becky Simpson.
Yeah. I love it. Becky's one of my favorites.
Well, so the reason I bring it up is because again, I'm so lucky to be working with so many great friends. We have like, our team is just blowing me away, but Becky is dear to me anyways. But her branding questionnaire I loved so much because she asks really good questions like, what are you going to be bragging about in 1 year, and then in 3 years, and then 5 years? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I hadn't thought of that with Season. I was just like, look, man, I just want to get this dress made so I can wear the color I want. You know what I mean? And so asking that sort of question, whether it's to answering it to someone else or blogging about it or journaling about it, or even just answering it to yourself, I was like, wow, this is really helpful to me. And better believe I was dreaming big and am dreaming big. I mean, I have like really big ideas for this, but one of the things I like about what I'm doing is that it still relates somewhat to the lifestyle, little like mini empire that I was at one point building with Style and Pepper.
And that's the thing, is that you are the common thread. And so, and we're writing the work chapter in our book right now. And so this is like so top of mind for me, this idea of like, I think creatives aren't building these exterior businesses. I think we're building life businesses. These businesses, or like we're business modeling our life in a way that we can create whatever, as long as we remain the common thread. We should figure out how it makes sense. Basically.
That said, though, yeah, so I agree with you. And I think that's how I've kind of operated up until this point. However, one thing I have been thinking about recently, kind of by accident, was the idea of building this new business or this new branch of my business that has a little bit more of an opportunity for an exit strategy.
Yeah.
Which, again, like everything I've ever done up until this point, not scalable at all. Like truly, I don't have an info product. I don't, like, if you hire me, you get me. I do have employees, but it's like, or not employees, but like contract employees, but it's not, they're not delivering what you're paying for. Essentially, they're helping me with the back end. And so now with this product, which product-based businesses obviously are like, that's kind of more the point, or not the point, but more, just naturally like that. I didn't think about it either until recently. I had someone say, will you sell if, like, when you build this up and it's going really well and you're going gangbusters and you want to do something else, what are you going to do? Just sell it? And I was like, Oh,
yes.
What? Yeah, I guess. Like, I hadn't even thought of that. It's funny because we actually had an interesting situation with Marriage is Funny, our main podcast that we do. We're on a big hiatus right now, so I honestly haven't thought very much about it recently. But when we were going gangbusters on that and during season 3 and really trying to monetize and figure out what we wanted to do, we were in talks with a company about them. And they have a product and they offer something to people right in our wheelhouse, and it's related to marriage and relationships and communication and all this stuff. And so they were like, would you ever consider selling, so that you guys were the ones basically creating the content?
Is it a vibrator?
No. No. Damn, actually that would be really fun. Can you imagine? We'd be able to make all the jokes we wanted to. Oh my god.
Right? There would be no line at that point, I think.
I know, exactly. So anyway, so it's interesting because it wasn't until I had someone ask me that I was like, oh, actually this, I guess, is one of the things I've done, one of the only things I've really done in the entrepreneurial world that does have less of a connection to me, Jessie. But obviously I think my personality is infused throughout, and I think luckily I'm going to be able to use my existing platform to hopefully make it a thing. But I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about.
We are constantly being asked how to drive more traffic to websites, how to get more eyes on your work, and I've got just the tool for you. Meet Edgar is a social media scheduling tool that will promote your content for you. So many creatives are writing amazing articles and publishing really great podcasts and have amazing services, but only promoting it once and never again. Edgar is the solution to that. The more you post directing people to your content, to your e-courses, to your products, the more traffic and eyes you'll have on your work. It's as simple as that. And Edgar is the tool that's going to allow you to work smarter, not harder, when it comes to getting those numbers. Try Edgar for 2 weeks for free, no credit card required, at www.meetedgar.com/beingboss. Okay, so one thing that I really want to point out whenever I'm looking at you creating this dress, which, by the way, I love the dress. It's so good. I was fortunate enough to be on your list and fill out a survey, and you were like, talk about the dress that's in your closet. And I talked about my favorite pair of leggings because
I know, I totally knew that was you, by the way. It was an anonymous survey, but I was like, I'm pretty sure this is Kathleen.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was anonymous. It was totally me.
It was anonymous, yeah.
That's hilarious. So, but then I started seeing peeks of the dress on Instagram, and I love the dress, first off.
Thank you.
But second, I love that dreaming big for Season and dreaming big for this brand isn't holding you back from starting small. And a lot of what you're creating kind of reminds me of, I even sent you this in a text. I was like, you're going to be the next DVF, like Diane von Furstenberg's wrap dress. And
Such
she's kind of known for that wrap dress. And her brand has obviously expanded much bigger beyond just the wrap dress.
Right.
And I tried writing a blog post about this the other day, but I couldn't quite articulate how I love that Kylie Jenner started with the lip kit.
Yeah.
And obviously her brand has exploded, and watching that has been really cool. How you feel about the Kardashians and the Jenners is another thing altogether. But I do love this idea that with unlimited resources, she still started really small. And I don't think it was just strategy. I really don't. I think that there was some more figuring it out as she went and just publishing before she was ready. At least my heart hopes that that's the case, by starting with just the lip kit.
She probably had a really expensive business coach that was like, no, honey, just start with one.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Which is hard to do. I mean, I don't know if it was hard for Kylie, but for someone like me who is just creatively stimulated all the time. And I mean, I always want to do all the things. You know that. And my enthusiasm gets the best of me, and then I bite off more than I can chew, and then I'm like flat out on my back because I am feeling paralyzed from everything that I'm trying to or wanting to do. But so I really appreciate even just the inkling of that comparison is so flattering, and I would love to be the next. I mean, I don't even know if that's true, if I would love to be the next DVF, but I would love to be someone who inspires and is known for creating things like her. And It's true. It was, again, I mentioned the story of how it kind of came about was a little bit of an accident, but then when I started on the journey, I was like, oh yeah. And then I can do a caftan, and we're going to do a pair of pants, and we're going to do this. And the one main thing that I know will tie it all together is that I feel really excited about at the moment is using the type of silk that we're using. And so it was, right now where I'm kind of thinking of going in the future is all kind of related to these like really flowy and multifunctional silk pieces. But it has been difficult to be like, no, you're just starting with the one, not even just dresses, period, but like the one dress design. And part of why it works is because it is, it's meant to be multifunctional. And so you really can, it transforms into like, originally it was 4 ways. And then at the photo shoot, we discovered a 5th way. And then the other day I was like, it actually kind of is more like 10 ways. But so I don't exactly know how the marketing stuff is actually going to end up. But it's that multifunctional, flowy, silhouette that's really important to me, and that's kind of what I've built my own personal style around. And so I'm trying to, like you said, really, really, really hone in on that one thing and perfect it, because like this is version 1, but there's so many things about version 1 already that I'm like, you know what, I bet if I had XYZ, I could make that one little part just a little bit better. And so I'm excited to even do version 2 or 3, and I'm also excited to get user feedback. Like I want to know what people love about it, what people would change about it. Whether it's like something simple like the length being different or whatever, or maybe it's something really technologically savvy. I'm I've always been super into technology across the board, but specifically within the fashion industry, I think it's fascinating what people are doing. One of my total like role models or whatever you want to call it, spirit animal, is the CEO and founder of Patgonia, Yvon Chouinard. I don't know how you say his last name.
Love Patgonia. Love everything about them.
I know. They're doing such great things. But just like learning more about his journey, and just watching the way that they have stayed not small, but like they've kept their company. I think it's a priority, it seems like, for him and for the company to stay nimble so that they can respond quickly and efficiently to their customers. And then so that they can also take really great care of anyone else that's a part of the community. And he still owns 100%. So they don't have to deal with investors or stock drama or any of that stuff. And I just love that about them. And like my goal with this for right now is to build something that sustains itself, sustains eventually me, and then eventually, me / the team, paying great people. And then maybe eventually then we break out into other, whether it's different pieces or garments or whatever, then great. Maybe it's a physical space. Maybe it's a weekend getaway. I don't know. But my goal is to just really stay focused, because that is a muscle that I have not really been great at building in my 8 years of being a creative entrepreneur. And actually, speaking of muscles, Kathleen, you always talk about how closely there can be ties between someone's fitness journey and their career journey. I love that. Specifically, creative entrepreneurs, I think, resonate a lot. And actually, do you guys listen to the podcast called How I Built This, or How We Made This?
I just saw you post about that, Emily. That's the podcast you should listen to on your road trip.
Oh, Emily.
Perfect. What's it called?
My gosh. It's called, I think it's let me just pull it up really fast.
Like how it was built, or How I Built This?
Here it is, How I Built This. Okay.
Perfect.
So it's How I Built This. It's done by NPR, so you know it's going to be quality. And yeah, and the host is darling. And so the episode about Patagonia, and so far they're profiling like all these big businesses, but it's great because they're really taking like to me, what seems like a very personal approach. And I like hearing the stories behind it. But the one with Patagonia was so good. And actually, I thought of you, Kathleen, because he talks about how when he was the host asked him a little bit about like profit margins and stocks and investors and all this stuff. And profit margins, that's a different story, but that's something that I'm dealing with on the daily, and it stresses me out to no end. But I have really strong values, so I'm trying not to let myself be swayed by something like a dollar sign. But one of the things he said is that there's 2 kinds of growth. there's the kind of growth where you get fatter, and then there's the kind of growth where you get stronger. And I was thinking about that. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like if you're gaining weight, you're either going to be gaining fat or you're going to be gaining muscle. I mean, I guess unless you're gaining water, but he can go into that. So let's just use the two examples.
Tied into gaining muscle.
Totally.
Holds more water.
Obviously, totally. So, but he was talking about, you can still, like a company could obviously take on a ton of investments and there's tons of ways to grow, but like look at it from the perspective of do you want that kind of growth? And is that going to cause you, like for instance with the fat metaphor, like you could totally just like pound down the donuts, gain a ton of weight that way, but then are you going to be able to walk up the flight of stairs at your house, or would you rather gain the weight by doing a bunch of lunges and squats and lifting so that you're actually becoming stronger? And I was like, amazing. I mean, he's a genius, but how can I apply this to what I'm working on now? And so I've been thinking about that a ton over the past few weeks.
I like that. Shit, Kathleen and I were talking about this just yesterday.
Which part? The fitness thing?
No, just how we grow and how we want to grow,
yeah.
and just remaining nimble is super important. And as you're talking about this, I'm also thinking about Sophia Amoruso, who I have mad respect for, and just seeing her journey and learning from her mistakes, if she would call it a mistake or not, of taking on investors and growing too big in the wrong ways, because I think she was super nimble and strong. Anyway, it's probably all working out for her. I mean, she seems like she's fine. But my question before we start to wrap up, I would love to know just kind of what a day in the life is like for you these days. Like, how much time are you spending working on your different projects, and what kinds of different tasks and hats are you wearing to make season come to life?
Wow, that's a great question. So I'm working on season 100% of my work bandwidth. We took a break from Marriage is Funny around Thanksgiving, and then I cranked out my mini series that lasted through basically just like the week before Christmas. So when I started the new year, I was like, all right, this is it, 100% in. And in terms of day to day, which by the way, like that's been a challenge and a gift at the same time in terms of like letting everything else go for just a season. Because we know we do want to get back to the podcast, and we will get back to the podcast, but it has to be after our Kickstarter campaign. And so we just have said like, look, we'll be back, but just hang on a sec. And that's been really hard, but also it's been kind of beautiful to not feel like I have this other stuff weighing on me when I'm in the midst of kind of my tunnel vision moment with season. So I'm just letting it happen, and it's been great. In terms of my day-to-day, I mean, honestly, like today's a little bit funky because I had a bunch of like appointments and things, but a lot of times, I mean, I'm really big on my morning routine. So I take about 2 hours to do all of that. And then I start working usually about 9. And then it's a lot of like emailing the guy trying to get our strap hardware ironed out, and then phone calls with our production company in Chicago, and trying samples on different friends, and meeting up for photo shoots. And we're launching, the Kickstarter launches next month. And so everything I've been doing this week has been geared towards that. I actually just brought on 2 interns, which has been exciting. And so a lot of delegation in terms of like having them help me with some of the content marketing that we're putting together. A lot of pitching myself to media outlets, which also really fortunately ends up being many friends, since that's kind of the space that I was in before, was like the fashion digital media space. But I feel like I'm constantly just really trying to be intentional about my day, and it's worked out pretty well so far, as long as I stay on top of it and stay organized. And honestly, like that's another thing, the freedom from doing all of the other stuff that I had historically been doing is clearing up so much mental space for me. Like I feel like I'm like witnessing when I'm talking about it, because it's changed my life. And I'm like, if you haven't read Essentialism, roll your eyes roll your eyes because I'm blabbing about it, and then go read the book, because it's really good. It's been a huge game changer for me.
I love that. Whenever you can focus, Guys, seriously. And not even
then try.
And, right? Things will change for you. But also, I think there's so much to be said about that prioritization. Like knowing what it is that you're doing in this moment and knowing what, like you mentioned, like going intentionally about your day, which comes from knowing what are the most important tasks, what's going to make the biggest impact, what needs to be moved out of the way so I can move the other things. That's how you get shit done.
Yeah, and one other thing I was thinking about actually the other day, back to Yvonne, I think that's his name, the Patagonia guy. It's funny because he told a story and I was actually applying it to my life in terms of personal style, but I actually really think what we're talking about right now is making me realize it could be applied to your work. And he was talking about how for an entire year, he's into all the outdoor sports. For an entire year, he decided to do all his fly fishing with just one fly, one little like tool fly doohickey thing. And I'm not a big fly fisher, so I don't know what that would be like. But he talked about how instead of like viewing that as some sort of I think he even used the word impoverished. Like instead of letting him feel like, oh, woe is me, I only have this one fly to use. He tried to focus on being so good with that one fly. So that instead of constantly having to rely on the entire toolbox, he was like, look, I can fit this fly in my pocket, and it comes with me and I can be an expert at it and all these things. And so he was talking about the fly and how that has applied to his journey at Patagonia. I was originally thinking like, oh, maybe this, because I've always said that having creative restrictions on yourself is where you can see so much growth. And I've experienced that in my personal style in terms of limiting my shopping in certain ways, or just even challenging myself to live out of a suitcase for longer periods of time because of our travels and stuff. And I love those moments where I'm like, oh, this is like a puzzle. It's like a riddle or a word. It's something for me to figure out. And I like figuring stuff out, especially when it's playing dress up. So with our dresses, I'm like, maybe not only is the actual physical dress my fly. I'm doing a 30-day challenge right now where it's the only thing I'm wearing for the next 30 days.
Which I love.
Right now. It's been really fun, but it's funny because I'm using it as my literal fly, but then I'm also pursuing Season as my fly for this time of my career, because I've had to say like, no, get over the woe is me feelings of giving up the other parts of my business that I really enjoyed, and just figure out ways to apply them to Season. And so if I love still talking with women, how can I find interns that want to be mentored? Or if I love still being on air, how can I turn my Insta stories and my YouTube channel into something that like makes people want to watch, and I still get to do my hosting and it still applies to it. But that story like really hit home for me, and I didn't realize until now that I love it could be applied to our career as well.
And I love that in the idea that you have this one fly, which is either the business or the actual dress, you've actually uncovered that you have a lot more tools in your tool belt than just the fly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to know what makes you feel most boss.
It's funny. I was like zipping around flustered and rushed earlier, and I was thinking about you guys because I knew we were going to chat, and I was like, I remember thinking, I don't feel boss right now. And then I was like, okay. And I wasn't rushed. Like it was an hour before we started. So I really had more of a buffer of time than I was giving myself in my head. But I thought, okay, calm down, go get dressed, get your makeup done, or not get your makeup, get your makeup on, which to me is not a lot. I don't do a ton, but I was like, just get ready and then start on what you need to get done before you hop on the call with the girls. And I honestly, I noticed such a difference for myself when I take the time to put together, even if it's just putting on a clean pair of leggings and like a minorly cuter t-shirt than I had on 5 minutes before. I mean, it can be so small, but those things for me help me feel so much more boss. And you guys had you had a great blog post on beingboss.club. I can't think of the name of the author, but she was writing about lipstick. and how
Yes, I think that was Jessica Willingham.
Yeah.
it was Jessica
We were talking
Willingham.
about like beauty being boss.
Yeah, and I retweeted that because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. It totally resonated with me. And I think so when I take care of myself and when I feel put together, which often means having a cute outfit or my hair or my makeup on, I feel really boss. It sounds trite and it sounds frivolous, but I'm such a firm believer that the confidence that comes from looking good on the outside has such a huge impact on how we feel on the inside. And so I will never apologize or back down from that.
Good.
Preach it. So, Jessie, where can our listeners find more and get the dress and follow along on your creative journey?
Yeah, so our website is seasoneveryday.com. And we're on Twitter, Season Everyday, and then Instagram, which we're having a lot of fun with Instagram right now. It's season.everyday. And actually, I'm posting a lot of stories over there, a lot of ways to wear the dress, and it's been a ton of fun. And I'm also everywhere at Style and Pepper, too.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. This is a dream. You're awesome.
This episode of Being Boss was brought to you by FreshBooks Cloud Accounting. Try it for free by going to freshbooks.com/beingboss. And special shout out to Meet Edgar. You can try them at meetedgar.com/beingboss. Thank you for listening to Being Boss. Find articles, show notes, and downloads at www.beingboss.club.
If you're a creative entrepreneur, freelancer, or small business owner who is ready to take your goals to the next level, check out the Being Boss Clubhouse, a 2-day online retreat followed by a year of community support, monthly masterclasses, book club, secret episodes, and optional in-person retreats. Find more at www.beingboss.club/clubhouse.
Thank you so much to our team and sponsors who make Being Boss possible. Our sound engineer and web developer, Corey Winter, our editorial director and content manager, Caitlin Brain, our community manager and social media director, Sharon Lukey, and our bean counter, David Austin, with support from Braid Creative and Indie Shopography.
Do the work, be boss, and we'll see you next week.